Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening. My name is Russell Brooks. Tonight's show will focus on a signature policy of President Trump's second administration, the outright hostility to diversity, equality, and inclusion, or DEI. It is a MAGA mantra that DEI results in reverse discrimination, rewards the unqualified, and penalizes white men. At the start of this term, we saw the black chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff removed. We saw the Librarian of Congress removed. Reportedly, 75% of the black officials in independent agencies, such as the National Transportation Safety Board, National Labor Relations Board, and Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, were fired. Programs promoting DEI domestically and internationally have been eliminated, and the traditional focus of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, including defending voting rights and curbing police brutality, has been turned on its head, as Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon declares her goal is to focus on turning the train around and driving in the opposite direction. The opposite direction of protecting the civil rights of minorities and the disadvantaged? It is unlikely that we will see anything different for the balance of this administration. But what are we likely to see in the next? Has DEI been so discredited by Trump that the next administration will be unable to restore some semblance of concern for minority rights? To help me explore this issue, I am joined tonight by Dr. Jeremy Meyer, professor in the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University. Dr. Meyer is the author of Running on Race, Racial Politics and Presidential Campaigns, 1960 to 2000. Dr. Meyer, welcome.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. For my first question, as a scholar on presidential politics and race, how do you explain this preoccupation with DEI in the second Trump administration?
Well, I think you have to put it in the context of Trump and race. Trump isn't consistent on most issues. He's been radically pro-choice, radically pro-life. He's been for gun control. He's against gun control. But on a very few issues like tariffs and like not wanting any alliances, he's been consistent. Well, one of those is race. Even when he was a real estate developer, he was on TV and he'd say, you know, if I was starting out today, I'd want to be a black guy because they get all the advantages. And he was saying that in the 80s. And the first time Donald Trump's name appeared in the New York Times, it was because he and his father were getting sued for racially discriminating against black applicants who wanted to live in some of their buildings. So he has a long history of race. He also, even after the 5 defendants in a New York rape and murder case, or rape case, were declared innocent, he still said they should get the death penalty. So he's always spoken to that backlash, angry, white rage at minority progress. And that's consistent throughout his first term and on now even with more consistency in his second term. So his anger at DEI is deep in his political and psychological soul.
But I don't recall this focus on race being quite as prominent in his first term. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right, but that's Trump is more Trumpy in his second term. There's just fewer guardrails. So there were people, his chief of staff right now is more of a enabler. And all of his chiefs of staff in his first term, and he had 4 or 5 of them, were handlers. They tried to keep Trump from being too racist, too this, too that. Susie Wiles is a good chief of staff in many ways. She's going to last with Trump, but one of the reasons she's going to last is that she tries to do what he wants her to do.
So her philosophy is to let Trump be Trump.
Very much so. And you know, Trump is also won in part because of that white anger. I did an article, actually a chapter in a book, about Trump's appeal in the Republican primaries of 2016. And predicting how people vote in primaries is hard because all of them are R's or all of them are D's. But the best predictor of whether a white Republican, and they're almost all white in the primaries, was going to vote for Trump was if they were angry about black progress. So Trump has been singing a song, and it's working for him. It's working for him in the primaries of 2016. It worked for him in the general election of that year, and again in 2024.
But would it be fair to say that Trump won this time around because of the American people's dissatisfaction with cost, with prices, with inflation? Some favored deportations due to the problems with the border. Others were focused on his promise to keep the United States out of wars, which we know didn't quite happen. But those seem to be the major issues. Where does DEI fall within that spectrum?
Well, it's always hard to tell why America voted for one person and not the other. It's so multivariate, so multifaceted. I agree with you that there were other issues that were higher, like inflation, like a promise to keep us out of foreign wars, or nostalgia for the good times before the pandemic, before inflation under Biden. So I think those issues are more important. But I do think that Trump touches something in many of his supporters when he brings up racial issues. And let me give you an example. A terrible tragedy happened early in Trump's second term. A plane landing at DCA hit a military helicopter.
Right.
Without any investigation, without any knowledge of what caused the FAA had not released anything. Within 24 hours, Trump was blaming it on DEI. I think he knew that one of the pilots was a woman. I can't remember if she was also a minority.
She was not.
But there was this instant, well, if there was a woman at the controls, it must be DEI. And that is constant with Trump. Trump just thinks white males are the most qualified. You saw that in the 2016 campaign when he just said, you can elect Hillary, other people won't respect us. And he said the same thing with Harris.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing I notice about the second term, so much of what he has done sort of falls straight out of the Viktor Orban playbook. The attacks on universities, law firms, media companies, etc. But the racial attacks or animus, that seems to be something that's more uniquely American. What are your feelings about that?
Well, if you go back in Hungarian history, they did have a fascist government that allied with the Nazis, and they were quite angry at their Jews. But there just aren't enough Jews left in Hungary for them to have much racial animus. In the case of Orban, it's all been directed at Africans and Middle Easterners, Muslims in particular, who he successfully portrayed for 16 years as this looming threat to Hungarian culture. The goulash would change if those foreigners came in. So race and right-wing revanchist movements is a natural ally, and Trump is part of that.
Mm-hmm. Also, I notice in terms of the Trump administration's foreign policy orientation, they do seem to have fallen into this concept that to save Western civilization, we have to keep non-whites out of our countries. We have to preserve our traditional cultural values, etc. Since you've described Trump's long-standing problems with African Americans, I guess that sort of naturally falls within his worldview.
It absolutely does. And what is amazing about Trump is he's getting away with open racism in a way that no president has done for decades. Ronald Reagan's team tried so hard to make sure he never said anything racist, never could be seen as too close to South Africa, white-led South Africa. Whereas here you have Donald Trump calling black countries shithole countries, and then cutting down all of our refugee programs except one.
For white South
for
Africans.
white South Africans. And white South Africans are actually doing fine. They still control most of the economy of South Africa. No one's told this to Elon Musk yet, but white South Africans are doing just great.
So if prior presidents, maybe with the exception of Woodrow Wilson, who famously showed Birth of a Nation in the White House, most presidents, even Republican presidents, try to avoid being outwardly racist or being viewed as racist. But Donald Trump can get away with it?
He is able to get away with it, but he gets away with so much that other presidents would not have been able to. We haven't had a president who slept with 2 porn stars and paid both of them to be quiet, actually. So if we were to sit down and list all of the ways in which Donald Trump transgresses, recently he's passed around a picture of himself as Jesus, for example. Yes. We'd be here all day. So in one sense, the open racism of Donald Trump is part of what so many people like about him. You interview his white supporters, they say, he says what we're all thinking. And I think just being openly anti-black, mad at affirmative action, is what they wanted.
That's what some of them wanted, I would presume. But even I would wonder if most Trump supporters fall into that category.
Well, I think they're either okay with it and they like it, or they're willing to tolerate it and they accept it as just part of the package. You like Trump, you got to take the rough edges.
And his fellow Republicans in the Congress or the party, I guess they feel the same way. If you like Trump, if he's winning presidential elections, this is part of the package.
Trump is an amazing politician in terms of his ability to come back. We used to think Nixon was the greatest comeback in American politics. Trump took the crown from him. To come back from 2 impeachments, to come back from January 6th, and most of all, as someone who studies presidential management, to come back from shitting the bed so badly on the pandemic and to get reelected in 2024.
It is amazing. We are going to have to pause our conversation with Professor Meyer for a short break, but please stay with us as we discuss more about DEI and President Trump when we return with more Inside Scoop.
So, I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that! That's disgusting! Oh, poop already! You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
So how was work?
It was 1,300 hours. My math class from 302 was in the trenches. Davy Roth had it the worst. Fractions were coming at him left and right. He just didn't get the damn things. 2 days ago, I tried to teach him what 1/4 of 1/2 was using different sizes of blocks. Yesterday, I tried again by dividing a pizza. Both missions failed.
Oh, no.
But today, I was ready. I created a combat math game where the only way to beat the enemy is to out-fraction them. Davy conquered every last denominator. My game was so successful, the principal is deploying it to math squadrons all over the school. Anywho, how was your day?
Oh, today my boss treated the office to salad wraps.
Salad wraps.
I know.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. here again, your host.
Hi, I'm Russell Brooks, joined by my guest, Dr. Jeremy Mayer. Let's continue. You've described very well its record when it comes to race and how consistent it has been over the years. But right now, what does his election, what does his conduct in office reveal about the state of race relations in America writ large?
It's an excellent question because it's tough to distinguish the politics of race from the polarization that we're all experiencing. So Democrats and Republicans hate each other more than they ever have, maybe since the Civil War, maybe ever. And that hatred is so deep and it encompasses so many issues. And as you know, a huge majority of African Americans identify with the Democratic Party, and a majority of whites identify with the Republican Party, although not as strongly. And so how much of this is more racism or racial tension between the races and how much is partisan, we don't know. But there are some hopeful trends, even in the Donald Trump era. Such as Gen Z, my students. They are so integrated, so racially open, so many of their heroes are Black or Hispanic or mixed race, and there's so much interracial marriage and dating with the millennials and with Gen Z. So I have hope for race in America when I look at how my students are handling tough political issues in my classroom and in their own lives.
Okay. But at the same time, that generation seemed to be attracted to a Charlie Kirk, who went on various campuses, spoke to them about why they should join him in the MAGA movement. And one of his calling cards was his particular approach to race, his problems with the concept of DEI. His concern that if he saw an African-American pilot, wondering whether or not he was qualified to be in that position. Gen Z, or the millennials, also seem, in some respects, to be prone to those beliefs.
Well, you're right. Charlie Kirk was popular on campuses, but how popular and who was he popular with? I don't think it would have been a majority of most college campuses. It's a small group, mostly white males. And DEI did have excesses and abuses. It went too far. And the demonization of white males went too far. And I think that gave some ammunition to speakers like Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk. And I think that Trump's attack on DEI is to burn it all down, the good and the bad. But your initial question at the top of the show was, what will the next president do? If it's a Democrat, I don't think they're going to bring back DEI as strong as it was under Biden, as strong as it was in the aftermath of the horrible murder of George Floyd. It's going to be a chastened and a resilient movement to achieve equality, but it isn't going to be the DEI that we saw from 21 to 24.
Donald Trump and his supporters famously called Kamala Harris a DEI hire. What do they mean by that?
Well, they wanted to raise doubts about her intellect, to raise doubts about her ability as vice president and prospective president. There's a weird tick that Donald Trump has. He very rarely calls white opponents low IQ, but he just over and over again calls Black opponents of his low IQ.
Seemingly, especially Black women.
Oh, yes. And I'm not saying there aren't low IQ Black women. They're just like everybody else. There's a range of IQs, but it seems strange that so many times he reaches into that rhetorical attack. And he did that against Harris. And Harris was not a great vice president, and she's not a great politician. But if you compare her background, her learning, her knowledge of politics to almost any appointee in Trump's cabinet, she wins that hands down. He has appointed some of the least qualified human beings on planet Earth to positions that they have no business having. Drunks and people with massive sex scandals. We just learned this week that a official at the DHS was allegedly a hooker, and it just goes on and on. So for him to question anyone's qualifications, or for him to call someone else low IQ, when every time he opens his pie hole, he demonstrates an ignorance of American government that would make you flunk my Intro to American Government class, it's real audacity.
That is pretty amazing. I hadn't heard the hooker thing.
It broke this week. She was apparently seeking a sugar daddy. She found one. He spent $40,000 on her, and he's now launched a complaint now that she has achieved a job where she thinks she's a security risk.
Unbelievable. Well, this it never stops with this administration. In terms of the philosophy of white supremacy, which seemingly Trump certainly abides by, but was that a major attraction for those people who flocked to the MAGA movement?
So I think it was an attraction. I think people felt free to say how they felt. They wanted Trump to be their avatar of whiteness. I think it helped him a lot in the 2016 primaries, and I have data on that. It is less clear in the 2016 election how much Trump's appeal was just, there is such disappointment in the American public with our political system, with the gridlock, with the hatred. And the Democrats were so dumb to nominate Hillary Clinton in 2016.
So why do you say that?
Well, because it was a moment of unease and unhappiness with politics as usual, and the Democrats nominate a dynasty, a Clinton. I remember one of my Republican students from a rural part of Virginia, before the 2016 election, he came up to me and said, if she loses, will she go away? Because she's been part of my whole landscape of politics since I first started in politics. It was a mistake not to nominate a new face in 2016. That gave Donald Trump the new face feel. People that decided in the last 2 weeks of the 2016 election, almost all of them broke for Donald Trump. The other group that broke for him, people that didn't like Hillary or Trump, they tended to vote for Trump. And there were more people who didn't like either of them than in any election in U.S. history until we get to the 2024 election.
Now, others would say that the election of Trump, certainly the first time, maybe less so the second time, because we had a black female for people to project their negative feelings toward, but at least the first time was a direct consequence of the election of the first African-American president. And certainly for those people who have difficulties with African Americans or DEI, that had to be a motivating factor.
I think you're right. I think it motivated some, but again, the voting decision is very complex. And Kamala ran a bad campaign. And I'll just give you one example. A third of Trump's ad budget went to the anti-transgender ads, where they'd say, she's for they, them, he's for you. And it was devastatingly effective. And months before, I knew that was going to be the attack. Everyone knew that. There was a phone call where the Biden-Harris campaign was talking to about 50 Democratic activists, including transgender activists. And the person leading the call said, we may have to moderate on trans women in high school and college sports. And one of the representatives for the trans movement said, that's the same as genocide. And I'm like, I don't think that's why Anne Frank was hiding in an attic from the Nazis, was to somehow avoid integrated school sports. There was an outrageous refusal to compromise. And people forget that Obama was not for gay marriage in 2008 or in 2012 because he wanted to win. If Kamala wanted to win, she and her team needed to get ahead on that social issue that so many people saw as crucial. And you know what? The trans movement would be so much better off if she was sitting in the White House. If they just made a simple compromise like the gay rights movement did in 2008 by endorsing Obama. It was Harris is ultimately to blame for not standing up to them the way Bill Clinton stood up to Jesse Jackson in the 1992 race, which was crucial to his victory.
Was it Jesse Jackson or Sister Soldier?
Well, he stood up to Jesse Jackson by attacking Soldier at Operation Rainbow's event.
Okay. Now, related to that, I would suggest that maybe not just Kamala, but the entire Democratic Party may have been captured by this sense that they had to be woke, or they fell into the traps of cancel culture. And that's why a candidate would feel that they could not suggest that maybe transgender rights could not be a priority at that particular time.
That's absolutely true. It's called being captured by the groups. Democratic politicians talk about the groups. And those groups are unions and environmentalists, it's the Hispanic movement, it's all the groups. And I'll give you an example of one that really was irking. Democratic politicians and my fellow academics about 7 years ago began saying Latinx, Latinx. Do you know who doesn't say Latinx? Latinos. And so if you're talking to someone leading one of these groups that you have to say Latinx, what a way to signal to people that you care more about words than winning. You care more about words than actual policies. I often get into discussions of immigration. I deliberately say illegal alien because that's the word that they use on the right. And if you start to play word games of gotcha and say, oh, you said the wrong word, you're a racist, you're an anti, let's deal with the policy. Let's get the policy right. It doesn't matter. The words have this magical power in French deconstructionist philosophy. Well, we're smarter than Derrida and Foucault. At least we should be.
Mm-hmm. Well, you must not be a popular guy among some parts of your campus.
Well, no, actually, there's a myth in America that campuses are so woke that you can't say anything. I've been on campuses most of my life, never really left college, and I've never seen a safe space. I have pretty open debates in my classes, and I think that the depiction by Republicans of campuses as entirely woke is an exaggeration.
Mm-hmm. So that cancel culture has receded, I guess, under the pressure of what we are going through on a national level. That, I guess, would be natural. But are you suggesting that we've moved on from that?
I think there's been a change on the college campus culture, in part because the excesses did go too far.
Yeah. It is time for another short break, but please stay tuned as we continue our conversation, a very riveting conversation actually, with Dr. Jeremy Mayer of George Mason University, as we continue to talk about DEI and its future, maybe post-Trump.
Nice going, Spencer! I can't believe we broke Old Man Hennessy's window.
Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball.
This is really bad. What are we gonna do?
We?
Go to the door, ask for the ball back. Are you serious?
It's my ball, Myrtleback.
You're so dead. I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go.
Dad.
See you, dude. See ya. You good for me and you're well.
Nice one. Some friends you are.
Hi. Tell him it was an accident, and we can fix the window. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Wanted some matches and that's no good. Yeah. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about rooftop life. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Yeah.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again. But an awkward silence can be a great thing, like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
I'm Russell Brooks, joined by tonight's guest, a scholar of race and presidential politics, Dr. Jeremy Mayer. Will an heir to the MAGA movement, as we presume the next Republican candidate will certainly seek to be compelled to project the same type of racial policies that we see in this second Trump administration?
Will they be compelled to, and even will they be able to? Trump is a special communicator. He just somehow gets a pass. He says so many things and does so many things that should end a political career, each one a torpedo that would have sunk any other politician. But I once wrote that Trump is a battleship that floats on torpedo explosions, but you can't focus on any one of them because there's just so many. So I don't think they'll be able to find another person with that rare gift of getting free passes. So there is part of the MAGA movement that is about white racial resentment, but it's about so much more than that. It's just one note in the symphony of MAGA.
So when we look at Vice President J.D. Vance, certainly his comments during the campaign about Haitians eating cats and dogs was not a particularly pleasant thing or comforting thing to see and hear. But is there reason to believe that he would depart from Trump's philosophy as it pertains to racial matters?
I've seen no evidence that J.D. Vance is willing to depart on that issue. And it's funny because when he was anti-Trump, he was this intellectual who wrote a book about Appalachia, came out of Harvard, and you would have expected moderation on race. And in fact, I think he was a racial moderate. But J.D. Vance was willing to put on the whole suit of Trumpism. I don't think he's going to take it off unless there's a good reason.
Mm-hmm. Presuming that he will be challenged by someone, we don't know who that might be. Some suggest that it could be Marco Rubio, but the way these things go, I suspect there will be other candidates that will attempt to make a run. Do you perceive that there is even the possibility that there could be a return to what I would call a more traditional Republican approach to racial politics?
I consider it very unlikely. I think Trumpism has been so successful. The 2024 election was a great achievement for the Republican Party, and they weren't getting those achievements with Romney, with McCain. They were in the wilderness in the Obama years, and parties hate to be in the wilderness. And they're going to try and find a unifying figure. And it won't be a traditional Republican like my colleague at Schar School, Mike Pence. It'll be somebody like Rubio. And there's a very interesting racial politic angle with Rubio because, of course, he's Hispanic. Mm-hmm. And Trump's numbers with Hispanics in 2024 were incredible. Mm-hmm. Some border communities with Mexico and Texas that are majority Hispanic went for the Republican Party in ways we've never seen before.
And of course, those numbers are being reversed right now.
Yes.
Due to his deportation policy.
Deportation, inflation, lots of things have made Hispanics in Texas and elsewhere unhappy with Trump. So he might lose those, but the Republican Party, at the concluding chapter of my book in 2002, I said, the incorrigible white Republican Party. They knew then they needed to get browner. They needed to diversify. And instead, over the last 26 years, they've doubled down on whiteness. Mm-hmm. They get more and more and more white, and they get a higher percentage of the white vote. And then the Hispanic outreach is the next crucial thing for the Republicans. I think they're going to figure a way to do that.
Mm-hmm. So the Republican Party has not written off all people of color. They seemingly have written off African Americans, but they at least hope to attract Latino votes going forward in the future.
Trump also did well with black males.
Better.
He did better. Well, yeah, well is a relative term, but he did better than Romney did, better than McCain did, and better than Bush did. So that's a pretty good achievement. Now, it's such a small population of an overall national poll that these numbers are kind of fuzzy, but Trump's machismo, his strong male energy, seems to have attracted Hispanic males and black males in pretty high numbers.
Certainly better than, as you said, previous Republican candidates. But I suspect that a lot of that has dissipated, again, for a variety of reasons, where he might be a macho male, but gas prices are too high. We're in a war for no particular reason, et cetera, et cetera. And I suspect that minorities are just as concerned about those issues as anyone else.
Yeah, I agree with you, but over all of this is polarization. And my first book is about race. I'm studying racial prejudice and how it plays in presidential elections, how the whole issues of race come up. And one of the ways we measured race going back to the 30s on into today is asking white people, would you be comfortable with your child marrying someone of the African American persuasion in various ways? And that number used to be extraordinarily high. And now it's down to somewhere between 8 and 12%. And we actually suspect it's a little higher because everyone knows the wrong answer is to say, I shouldn't. But do you know what number has soared? The number of Americans who say they don't want their child marrying someone of the opposite party. That's much higher among Republicans and Democrats than any race issue at all. So how much is race and how much is hatred of Democrats? That's a hard thing to measure.
That's very interesting. Now, again, if Republicans do not depart from this MAGA mantra against DEI and seemingly against minorities in general, that doesn't seem like a very viable long-term strategy for their party in an ever more diverse America. Is that wrong?
I think that is wrong. I think there's ways to make this work politically, because one of the issues that Sandra Day O'Connor, the Supreme Court Justice, raised in a Supreme Court decision about city contracts being given a certain percentage had to go to black-owned firms. She said, I may approve this today because of the evidence presented in court about discrimination and the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow enrichment. But my question is, how long? For another 10 years, another 25 years, and we're kind of hit that with affirmative action. The Supreme Court has now struck it down in university admissions. They're going to be striking it down in city contracting and in other set-aside programs. I think that America is going to come to a different equilibrium on race. It won't be where Donald Trump is, but it will not be where the Democratic Party was in 1985, 1995, 2005.
Okay, now that may be true for Democrats, but at least some Republicans seem to believe that they have the answer to dealing with greater diversity, and their solution encompasses greater deportations, encouraging higher birth rates among white Americans, altering immigration policy to, as you say, bring in white South Africans, and I guess if they could, Swedes and Norwegians.
Well, that was what Trump said. Why can't we get people from Norway? And I'm like, because Norway is richer than we are.
So that sort of thinking, I don't think is going to help their case, even among the African Americans and Latinos that may be somewhat sympathetic to them regarding other policies.
Well, I'm going to draw a distinction there between, I do think there's racism in Trump's anti-immigrant policies, and I think that appeals to some white people. But there's a sizable percentage of the black community that is also uneasy with immigration, and they have a right to be so because the data is coming out that immigrants do lower working class wages when they cross a certain threshold. And so the black community has more lower income wage earners than the white community, and their equities are more threatened by immigration than that of white Americans.
That may be true for some. I recall that during the, I guess, buses that Abbott and others sent to major cities there was concern among people who were already in those cities, already in lower income neighborhoods, that why are people who are just arriving receiving more support
Right, and that, you see
did.
that in the tension between the black community and the Asian community. You know, the plaintiffs in a lot of these anti-affirmative action cases in universities are Asians, because the Asian community often feels, and I shouldn't speak for them, but I've also studied this, there's a strong element in the Asian American community that believes school admissions should be race blind.
Sure.
And if it's not race blind, then they know they're going to get screwed. And so you see this in Virginia, where the Republican Party has done a great deal of outreach to Asians in Fairfax over admissions to the magnet school for science and math.
And I'm going to presume that you would contend that Democrats have sort of mishandled those arguments and not being able to successfully argue that these minorities need not fight among themselves.
I don't know that I'm going to put that on the Democrats. It is hard to navigate what's the right thing to do in that situation. Fairfax is struggling with it still, and it's not an easy answer because you have choices, the two outcomes you don't like. If you don't look at race at all in admissions to Thomas Jefferson Magnet School, you often end up with a school that's 3%, 4%, 5% black, about the same for Hispanic, when Fairfax is quite diverse. And a school that's 95 or 92% white and Asian is maybe not what we want. But if you look at race, then you're going to have applicants who are disappointed and allege that standards were lowered for some but not all. So neither outcome is happy.
So there is no answer.
Well, I can't solve all of America's racial problems in a 1-hour show. And it needs 2 hours at least.
Okay, we were hoping you could. You wrote a book about it. All right, so if Republicans wanted to take a different approach, do you see anyone out there among the current Republican leadership that fits that bill?
I really don't. I don't think the Republican Party is going to look to have a radical shift from Trumpism. That could change. If Trump ends this time in office as a complete failure, which I thought he did in 2021, but it wasn't complete enough. So even a more complete failure, say George W. Bush, when he left office in 2008, he was quite unpopular. So if that happens, the Republican Party might well look for a new formula.
Sure. Well, once again, we're going to have to take another short break, and then we're going to conclude with our final segment on this discussion of DEI and race when we return with a bit more of Dr. Jeremy Mayer on Inside Scoop.
Okay, so we drowned the fire, stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. Already posted it.
I got a crick in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex. But I'm scared of very sad all that I could do was remember you. You know I usually say no, but if you throw me love, I'll throw you some more.
It's a big responsibility.
Oh, it's huge. I know, it's huge.
And the salary.
Oh my god, yes. I mean,
Right.
like, I was about to move in with my parents, and right before, so this saved me.
I really believe in you, you know?
Thank you. It's nice to hear that from someone
These are cool. Did you, what did you?
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
I'm Russell Brooks, joined by tonight's guest, Dr. Jeremy Mayer of George Mason University. We spent a lot of time tonight talking and analyzing the actions of the Republicans. Now let's turn to the Democrats. Can a Democratic presidential candidate successfully use DEI as an issue in their campaign?
I don't think so. I think they need to come up with a different way of talking about race in the same way Clinton did in 1992. The Jesse Jackson campaign of 1988 was a great thing, a magnificent achievement for a man and for a movement, but it also damaged Mike Dukakis terribly. And candidate Clinton figured out a way to bring white and black people together in a unifying coalition when Jackson and Dukakis were divided. That's what the Democrats need to do, figure out a way to get past some of the excesses of DEI and remind Americans of the things that were wrong with racism, such as the murder of George Floyd. That was a unifying moment for America. There were very few people that could look at that horrible 9-minute video of a murder and say, that's what we should be doing. And so the Democrats need to point out that, and then also to point out the excesses of DEI and bring us together.
Do you believe most Americans care enough about DEI or its demise for it even to be an issue that they think about very much?
So I think DEI has been, to use a racially charged word, tarred. It is no longer able to be rescued from the excesses of its proponents and the angry response of Trump and his people. So that's what I mean. They need a new language of unifying ideas. I'll give you an example of what I mean. There was this fear in the Democratic Party that they couldn't have a rapid primary with Harris being vice president. Once Biden's decrepitude was shown to the nation and he withdrew, everybody said, we're getting behind Harris. And the fear was black voters weren't mature enough to handle if you held a primary contest and you didn't pick a black female who was running as the vice president. I think that misjudges black voters badly. They are mature now in American politics. They've had a president in Barack Obama. They know what it's like to get to the mountain. They want to get back there, mostly, sure, with a black candidate, but if not that, let's go with somebody who can win. And if the Democrats would have been so much better off if Harris had been forced to fight for the nomination. Maybe she would have won, maybe she would have lost, but she would have had Democratic legitimacy that she badly lacked.
Well, I may take issue a bit with that particular point, mostly because I think some Democrats thought that a primary would expose divisions in the party, and with the small amount of time that they had, any type of contest would not be productive. Not just because African Americans might be upset with the loss by the incumbent vice president, but that valuable time would be lost as they attempted to work out some type of reasonable contest to enable anyone to come out of it and hopefully have a decent shot against Donald Trump.
You may be right. I do think the Democrats suffer from being too cautious. They've been so afraid of convention chaos since '68 and '72 when they had disastrous conventions. But look at Donald Trump in 2016. By normal standards, he had a disastrous convention because the #1 rival, Ted Cruz, stood at the microphone and said, I will not endorse President or candidate Donald Trump. By normal standards, that's a disaster. That's what Democrats were afraid of. Trump played it like politics. Controversy, chaos, gets you ratings. So the Democrats should have rolled the dice instead of going with boring.
Well, I guess they need to find a reality talk show host
Well, let's not go that far.
to run on their side.
Or maybe a local cable TV host.
Well, we'll see about that. But would you expect to see DEI or some form as a component in a Democratic platform?
I do think that there will be race in the Democratic platform because it's one of their core beliefs. The Democratic Party is proud that it was the party that led on civil rights. It's also the party, as Republicans never tire of it pointing out, of Jim Crow and slavery. That's the Democrats too. Don't write letters, I already know that. But the Democrats were the party that cured Jim Crow, that stopped it, with some help from Republicans like Ev Dirksen of Illinois.
Sure.
It was mostly Democrats.
Okay. Now, you have mentioned a few times that there were admittedly excesses in the implementation of DEI, whether we're speaking about government or corporations, academia, which you know so well, maybe the media. Would it be appropriate for there to be some type of serious re-examination of DEI, even among its supporters, as we think about going into the post-Trump era?
I think there needs to be that, because some of the things that were done on campus and in corporate America in the name of DEI either didn't do any good or may have done some harm. I'll just give you an example. Some of the DEI training that was done at campuses and corporations was, let's divide all the white people and divide the minorities, and then they were taught things about each other and how to be anti-racist. And one of the things that some whites were taught is that punctuality is white supremacy, that expecting people to be on time is part of white culture. And that is such a load of crap, right? That anyone can be on time, anyone can be late. This myth of black people time is just that, a myth. And it's also infantilizing. And so that sort of essentialist anti-racism that sees some things as white and some things as black, that needs to go. And so people like Ibrahim X. Kendi, kind of a hack in my opinion, became so influential in the post-George Floyd era, and we need better training, better leaders. I speak for many of my colleagues around the country in academia. The anti-racism, anti-discrimination training that happens in American higher education, if it's as bad as that in corporate America, we need a lot better training.
Okay, so taking your point that there were excesses, and that certainly the implementation of DEI should have been done better. But can the Democratic Party win, especially in red America, if they're seen as being sympathetic to even the reform of DEI?
I think so. I think that is the message of Clinton's 1992 campaign and Barack Obama's 2008 campaign, is that there are gettable white votes for the Democratic Party, even when it's led by a black man with the middle name Hussein. And it took a global economic collapse to elect Barack Obama. And we may see a Democratic coalition built around, hey, we've all suffered under Trump, let's unite and solve all of our problems at once.
So it sounds like the promotion of cancel culture or being woke was kind of a gift to the Republicans, sort of in the fashion of how people utilize to fund the police.
Right, and I also think that the Democrats sort of lost their way with this cancel culture. If you look what happened to Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle is a comedian. He's one of the most brilliant comedians on earth. And he began to make jokes about the transgender community because it's a target-rich environment. It's just funny. And it's new, and it's edgy. And the best comedy is always out there on the edge. Great comedians like Chappelle will go there. And the reaction of the transgender community was, how dare you? And he has this wonderful riff where he says, look, one of the reasons I'm doing this is because black Americans were around for centuries before we got our rights. You guys just got here 4 minutes ago, and you're getting all this on a tray. It's kind of weird, and I'm pointing that out. And the Democratic Party needs to learn from people like Chappelle that you can talk about these issues without being worried about all the political minefields.
Well, I think politicians have to worry about the political minefields. But I take your point, but I think David Chappelle can do certain things. I'm a fan of his, actually, that just wouldn't be appropriate for a politician. And for the transgender community, they shouldn't have to wait for a certain amount of time before they start exerting their rights.
But you have to wait for the education to happen first. The gay rights community wanted marriage. Obama was for gay marriage in his heart.
Sure.
But he was a great politician. He knew that he couldn't get that far ahead of the voters. Same thing with transgender. You have to, the advocates shouldn't have been holding Harris and Biden to ridiculous standards of purity. They should have been out there trying to convince Americans of the justness of trans rights. Because I agree with you, I believe trans rights are human rights. But politics is a different story. It is a brutal process where you have to wait for change and you have to change people's minds at the same time.
Okay. Now, you mentioned Bill Clinton, that he was capable of engaging voters and leading the Democratic Party in a different direction, and you seem to believe that the party needs someone like that now. Do you see anyone out there that even appears to have those capabilities?
Well, race is not going to be the only issue. The Democrats also need to figure out how to talk about Israel and the Gaza. It's going to be a really, really brutal bunch of decisions that they make. I do like Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. I think she's shown in her governorship, because Michigan has a sizable black population, she's shown a biracial coalition, and she's also spoken to the Arab American community there. She's impressive. I very much like Josh Shapiro. He could be our first Jewish president. He's got to figure out the Gaza issue, the Israel issue, better than he has. But he's very popular in black communities in Philadelphia and in Pittsburgh. I think he could be a unifying figure under the right circumstances, and there are others. But what Clinton had that no other white politician of his age had was a comfort with the black community. Being from Arkansas wasn't enough. He was that, but he'd also, as governor of Arkansas, just gone to black churches over and over and over again. And so it can be a white candidate, it might be a Hispanic candidate, whoever it is, it has to be someone that has an ease and a comfort with a number of communities.
Whether we call it DEI or some other name, it is important for America to embrace the notion that it must make room for all of its talents, from all of its citizens, regardless of race, creed, ethnicity, religion, gender, or sexual identity. And I think what makes America unique, and I hope you agree, is that we actually believe it's possible.
I agree with you. That is the American story.
Well, we had a great discussion tonight, but we're out of time. So let me thank Dr. Jeremy Mayer from GMU for such an enlightening conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you will come back soon. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you will join us again next week for another edition of Inside Scoop. Good night.